So welcome again to our daily video. And we begin, as always, with our two blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, honeh be'et tzara. Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who answers us in our time of crisis. Hayom mea tisha v'shivim yomim lahaseger. This is the 179th day in our isolation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who commands us to busy ourselves with the study of Torah. And we study Torah even in our isolation, and we study Torah because it's how we spend our time. So I want to talk a little bit today about Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is one of these holidays, as is many on the calendar. It goes by a number of different names that speak to all the different aspects of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah has many different parts to it, and the names of Rosh Hashanah reflect the different parts that are there. For example, it's known as Yom HaZikaron, a day of remembrance. This is the name that the Torah gives it. Not altogether sure what exactly is being remembered, but the day that God remembers us, the day we remember God. But it's a day of remembrance. Yom HaZikaron is how the Torah knows it. Another name for it is Yom HaTikiyah, the day of the sounding of the shofar. I mean, that is the central ritual of Rosh Hashanah, the sounding of the shofar. So it's known as Yom Tikiyah, the day in which we sound 100 blasts on the shofar. It is also called Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. It is the day that, according to the prayer Unatana Tokef, on Rosh Hashanah we are judged, and on Yom Kippur our judgments are sealed. In this sense, it is we appear as if in a court. We appear. God counts us and determines what our year is going, based on our actions, how our year is going to unfold. But it's also known as Yom Harat Olam, the birthday, as it were, the birthday of the world, maybe the birthday of the universe, depending on how wide a picture you want to take of it. But it's considered to be the birthday of the world. The world was created from nothing, and the birth of the universe comes this universe that we have today, that we recognize, our known universe, is from the void that is in the center of God. The mystics talk about that there is this constant chaotic void known as Ein Sof, which is completely and totally filled with God. And in order for God to create the universe, God needed to withdraw God's self and create this vacuum bubble inside this Ein Sof, this eternity. And inside this vast bubble of emptiness, inside of that is where God creates this universe. Now, we know that the history of the Israelite people, the history of the Jewish people, as it were, begins with our independence from slavery in Egypt. So the beginning of the year, the marks our independence as a people. That takes place at Pesach time. But for the birth of the world, Rosh Hashanah represents the creation story. According to some of the sources, that the world was created actually the week before Rosh Hashanah, and the culminating day, the Shabbat, in which God rested, was the first day of Rosh Hashanah, falling as it was on Shabbat, like it falls this year. Now, in a similar way, Yom Kippur represents death. We don't think of Yom Kippur. We think of Yom Kippur as white and all the good things that come from finding our atonement. But if you think about it, the rituals of Yom Kippur are very much death rituals. We wear a kittel that very much is in the kind of kittel that we would wear as a shroud in our caskets after we die. We don't eat because the dead don't eat. We don't drink because the dead don't drink. We don't bathe because we bathe the body of the dead before we bury it, and that is the last bathing that the body receives. And of course, there is no sex when you're dead either. Many see the rituals of Yom Kippur as emulating, as sort of symbolic of our own death, because the judgment on Yom Kippur is the ultimate judgment. Once that judgment is sealed, our fate is sealed, and therefore we die. So therefore the Yamim Noraim, these days of awe, this span of time from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, really represents the time that we have from birth all the way to death. There is a void that comes before we're born, and after we die, there is the void of unknown that happens, that whatever happens after our death. We only have consciously this time that exists between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the 10 in-between days that we talk about, the 10 days of Teshuvah. So if all we have is this in-between time, then this season is designed to remind us of the importance of the passing of time, from birth to death. How are we using this time? Sometimes we call it the time of the dash. You have a birth date, and you have a death date, and there's a dash in between them. But the question is, how do we use that dash? What does it mean to us? How are we using the time? And we know that this amount of time is an unknown amount of time. We do not know how much time we actually have in this in-between time. So what counts, ultimately, between birth and death, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, what ultimately matters is now. At the end of the service, we have this piyut. It's called Hayom. It's called today. What do we need to do today in order to give meaning to our life? What do we need to do today to bring value into our life? What do we need to do today to create something that will outlive us? What do we need to do today to teach our values to the next generation? What are we doing? Are we killing time? Are we wasting time? Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur teach how valuable time is, because time is so perishable. It reminds us that the time that we have does not last forever.